Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Mum Show. My name's Marina, I shall be your host as we sit and talk about how to stay connected with our teenagers. So get yourself comfortable, grab a cup of tea and let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Mum Show Kitchen. I have with me today Pastor Claire Hooper and child therapist Emma Brown. And today we're having a talk about staying connected with your teens. And if there's one stage of life that everyone warns me about, it's the terrible twos and the raising teenagers. But is it all that bad, or can we find a way for us all to just get along? What do we think, ladies? You've got teenagers. Is it as bad as they say?
I love having teenagers. I did get warned a lot, but I love it.
I think I'm only just into that phase myself. My daughter's 13, and I think I've had to really remind myself about what is going on internally for her at the moment. And I think all of us as parents, we kind of have this, this idea of the teenage years being, a bit scary and a bit like, oh, do we lose our kids for a while and have to wait and bide our time till they come back? And how do we kind of keep that connection going? And I think that a huge part of it is trying to, if we can kind of really understand what is going on in their brains, the changes, the physical changes that actually happen in the teenage brain throughout adolescence and their bodies. I think if we can get to grips with that a bit more, that will give us more compassion for them and empathy, and I think it will lessen the likelihood of having it being so conflictual during that time.
That is true.
See, I don't think the whole dread and fear, I don't think that's helpful. No. Because I remember being a teen and I remember my parents saying that they couldn't get anyone to volunteer on the youth trip because they were scared of us all. And I was like, we're really nice. Like, I'm really good fun. Why don't they want to spend a weekend with me? Yeah. Do you think it must crush their self-esteem a little bit more when everybody's dreading the teenage years?
Absolutely. And you see these awkward conversations sometimes, an awkward adult who's scared of a teenager and a teenager who's already feeling awkward anyway. And you put them in this conversation and there's this like, so what exams are you taking?
Yeah,
what do you want to do with your life?
What do you want to do with your life? And they're like, I don't know, I just want to eat sweets on a Friday night. They're just not actually, especially when they're a young teen.
I just think they get a bad press.
I
think culturally we just see these, the teenage years as being something to kind of like be really worried about, and seeing more than two teenagers at any one time. There must be a gang, and what's going to happen? Yeah, so I think they get a really poor press. I think we have to really kind of move towards understanding them much better than we do.
And yet, for me, I've got two teenagers and a tween, and having them in my space has just taught me so much. They're so knowledgeable. They're so understand the world around them. They're so interested. They're learning. Their brain capacity for learning is huge. And I'm like, I am constantly learning things from them, and I actually enjoy that side of it. Really enjoyed that bit of having teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like, if we can understand a little bit better what's going on, then it's like you say, we can have more empathy, we can connect better. Can you give us just like a brief overview of what happens in a teen brain? When they hit teenagehood, what changes are they facing?
Well, do you know what? I think that somebody who I really admire, and I know that you've read a couple of his books, Dan Siegel, he's a child psychiatrist, and he came up with a really good way of understanding the essence of the teenage brain, and it spells the acronym. So the ES is that emotional spark. We know that our teenagers have what we kind of call mood swings, but actually physiologically that's real. That part, the downstairs part of their brain, which kind of governs all their emotions, that's firing much more frequently than it does during earlier childhood or later adulthood. So there's a reality to that. There are mood swings. I guess the downside to that is that they're moody. And the upside is that they're full of passion.
Yeah.
So it's kind of seeing things a
absolutely.
bit differently. So that's the ES. The SE, if I can remember rightly, is the social engagement. And that's the whole idea of how understandably, well, I think God has created this period in our lives so that young people start to move away from their family, move away from their parents and start to be much more interested in their peer group. And that's a huge sense of kind of needing to belong.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've maybe experienced this, Claire, with yours, but you know, when our teenagers say, I have to have these trainers, I have to have them. Actually, for us, we're just thinking they're being dramatic. For them, it actually feels probably a bit like life or death. In order to feel that connection and belonging to this group, this is what I need to. So while we don't need to buy them whatever we want, whatever they want, whatever they're asking for, we do need to have some empathy for their point of view within that and understand what's going on. And then the N, so the N of essence is the novelty seeking. And that is what we sometimes see as risk-taking behaviours in teenagers. And that, again, is the effects of the hormone called dopamine. So ordinarily, our dopamine levels are quite level during childhood and adulthood, but in the teenage years, they drop. So teenagers are almost hardwired to seek out new, novel experiences.
How interesting.
And they also kind of have this what we call hyper-rational thinking, which is basically their inability to think as rationally as we do. So that it's like lack of consequential thinking, I guess. So they're hyper-rational in their thought processes. They're sort of much more impulsive, much more wanting to seek out new experiences. I guess the downside of that is that sometimes it can be a bit risky and they can forsake morality and the right decisions for this need to kind of take risks and do something new. But I guess the upside of that is that I suppose it teaches them, it allows them to have those experiences that allow them to live out in the world and be less dependent on us.
Wow.
And then the last bit, very quickly, is the CE, which is the creative exploration. And that's the part where we hear teenagers question everything. So I think, they spend the first 12 years of their lives learning, taking in all this information, don't they? And then they spend the next 12 years questioning it. So actually, do I? Should I really think the way my parents think about this? Do I agree with what they say about that? Do I believe what they believe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great questions.
But I guess the downside of that is it can be quite confusing for them and quite irritating for us. But the upside of it is that I guess when we think about all the new inventions and the innovation that's happened throughout history, a lot of it stems from the teenage brain. A lot of it stems from our teenagers thinking outside of the box, being so creative, being able to kind of think about these big dreams and plans and putting them into practice.
I wonder if that's why Jesus had a number of teenagers in his followers. Because I wonder if, he would have known that because obviously God knows everything, but why he handpicked that, the risk-taking, the creativity, the questioning, why he purposefully went social engagement, why he purposefully picked that to help, I suppose, shape a new culture that he was trying to build.
I think what's really interesting as well, when you consider all that's going on, it's kind of as busy almost as the early years of a baby, isn't it? That's how much development is going in there. And I kind of understand the significance of, like, literally in the Jewish culture, they throw you a party. You have a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah, and it's like, woohoo, let's have a party. This is amazing. You're going into this whole new season. You're becoming your own person. You're becoming an adult. This is incredible.
It's a celebration.
We should be doing that in our culture. We need to have something where we can say to our teens, guess what? Life's about to get a little bit crazy.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
The tolerance of it, the understanding of it, I think is something you have to change. When you've got little children, and I like that, it's interesting, that risk side of things, because children tend to be safer because they've got adults to model. They model what the adults around them, and adults tend to be a bit safer than teenagers do. And so they do what you say, and if they don't, you tell them off and you teach them how to do what you say. And then you've got 11 years of this, and then all of a sudden, this whole thing changes, and they change, and you see parents just not catch up. And then you see them butt heads for 5 or 6 years and then them leave to go off to university or move away, and then eventually relationship rebuilds. But I just really believe there's a way of staying connected throughout that time. If you adapt, if you change, if you look, and if you sort of hustle a bit in your relationship and figure out what motivates them, there's a way of doing it.
Well, let's go there. But first of all, we cannot keep talking about teens without hearing from teens.
Yay.
So let's hear from our teenagers.
Okay, kids, action! I don't feel like my parents understand me as much now as they did when I was little. It was mainly what they said went, so I would believe anything that they said. And now there's kind of like a lot more people in my life.
There's, like you said, so many people saying completely different things.
It's just a bit confusing. And also, like your mum says, you're perfect, but then at school you get people saying, go kill yourself. It's kind of like...
Yeah. You kind of like definitely think, well, what are they saying was true? But then you always kind of know, well, your parents aren't going to lie straight to your face to tell you if you needed to change something. But then there's also like people your age telling you need to change or telling you need to do something, and that just might have a bigger effect.
It is really quite hard when you have so many things going on in your head. You've got school, you've got all your grades to keep up, otherwise you'll have your mum nagging at you. Then there's your mum saying she loves you. Then you have other people saying go kill yourself, and you're just like, not what I need right now, not what I need.
If you're going to do something with your parents, what do you enjoy doing with them, do you think?
The best times that we probably have with our parents is when we're doing stuff mutually that we both like.
Yeah.
For me, it'd probably be like watching a film that we both like, and music.
Yeah, I could probably agree with the music, because in my car, in the car, me and Mum will just have a good sing-song.
I think my parents understand me more now because I've started fencing, and that's what I want to do. Like, I want to go far in it. And I think just them being there with me and doing it with me has like helped. I think quite a bit's changed because I spend a lot more time with my dad because we're away quite a lot of time. It's just we got closer and more things revolve around that really.
Do you value then having your parents be available according to what you're feeling at the time?
I'd probably say that I struggle opening up as much as I'd like to. Like, I probably would say, can I have a hug? But like, most of the time I would just suck it up and do something else.
Say when you're on your own and you're with friends and you just need that support, and it's just like, I need my mum right now, and it's just like, can't do that because she's not there right now at that time.
We hug when like they're proud of something I've done, or when like I need somebody. So I think I'm kind of prefer just to stay the same.
When you were younger, what made you feel loved by your parents? And do you think that's changed now that you're in your teens? Is it anything different that makes you feel loved by them?
If I'm feeling like kind of upset or something, I'd probably like phone one of these, and then instead of going to tell my mum, I just find them easier to talk to.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes it's not a thing that you can talk to your parents about, not in a bad way, but it's like your friends understand it more because they're kind of on the same level. Yeah.
And like they go through it with you,
Yeah.
experiences.
So powerful, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Isn't it unbelievable how they have literally gone through what we've just discussed?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found really powerful was at the very beginning, they're instantly going into, is everything they've said, is everything they've told me true?
Yeah.
Is everything they've told me true? This is the first thing, which is what you were saying about questioning what they've heard, questioning what they're thinking. And another thing, because I spent a long time with these teens kind of chatting around, and another thing I really noticed was this tension that they seem to hold with physical contact. And it's like, sometimes I really want a hug, but then I'll just suck it up because it just feels too vulnerable to have to ask you right now, or to have to come out and say it. And there just feels like they're constantly, I'm sure it's not constantly, but they're being open with us. They're being very honest with us. And there are times in their lives where there's that kind of tension of, oh, I feel like I need this, but I don't want to ask for it, or I'm not 100% sure where I stand with that.
Yeah, it's that kind of still somewhere they're in touch with their need for intimacy and closeness and to feel that connection with us. But there's lots of other things going on which is telling them to kind of just deal with it yourself, or move away from your parents, or they can't really meet your needs anymore and you need to kind of go somewhere else for it. I mean, I you know, it's hugely emotional watching that. I haven't seen any of that footage, so for me, seeing my daughter on there is it was quite powerful. Yeah. But I actually with the physical touch side of things, I think you've got to be really creative. You've got to find other ways, haven't you? Of
we talk about this, don't we?
Physical touch. I mean, I know for Libby, a lot of the time she will ask me to plait her hair. And within that, then I'll plait her hair, and then she'll kind of maybe just lie back on me for a little while. I can give her a little shoulder rub, or, you know, just stroke her hair for a little while. And that is, you know, for me, I know how powerful it feels for me, and I'm sure for her that there's a sense of that's our way of connecting without it feeling too intimidating. Yeah.
I do that with mine, and all in my head I'm going, don't be weird, Claire, don't be weird. Because what I want to do is like when they're little, oh, come here, give me a cuddle. And they just want me to plait their hair, and like, I'll take it because it's what they want. Well, I don't plait my boys' hair, my little girl's hair. But my boys trying to find other ways. I've just had to, gosh, I was the egg that they cracked on the trampoline if it meant that I could have some physical contact with them. Have you ever played that game, Crack the Egg?
No. Take us there. Like, what is this game?
You sit in the middle of the trampoline and you get into a tiny little ball, and then they have to bounce and they have to crack you open.
Oh, this is a great
game.
I'm playing this game.
Crack the Egg. So I was that. I have been like in goals, if it means they'll play football. I have wrestled. I have I've done gymnastics in the house with them. I'll do whatever I can. But in my head I'm going, don't be that weird mum that tells them, oh, come here and give me a kiss.
Yeah.
But like, I've got one of my boys and one boy is really quite, I suppose, all right without physical affection. He's much more, even as a baby, the first thing he did was play. He wanted to lay on a mat and play, and I wanted to cuddle him and he wanted to play. My daughter's a little bit more like that, but my middle son, oh no, I can create a space for him on the sofa. Come over here. Or he will do the same.
He's my giant baby.
Yeah, he is, because he's bigger, he's taller than my husband. I'm like, what is this man-child in my life? I don't know what to do with this size of human.
But that's so lovely. He feels still able to do that with you, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's because we've just really worked on that, and I just say to myself, don't be weird. Don't be that mum. Do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, I do know exactly what you mean, because it does get weird. It does. There, you know, you never
just keep
think
it cool.
You don't think it can happen when they're little, and then all of a sudden one day it just feels weird. It just feels awkward, and it's. I guess that's
cool,
you
Claire.
being in tune with their
Totally.
awkwardness and their sense of feeling exposed and self-conscious.
But you know, don't you, when you, especially with physical affection, unless you give them positive physical affection, we all need it.
So
they're going to search for it in all sorts of ways, whether it is rough and tumble, whether it is in relationships, and so to keep that healthy and appropriate and keep them. It's just watching it go on, watching it play out in their lives, and understanding them now changing to adapt to the stage of life that they're at.
I like what you're saying about playfulness, because it's reminding me now of a memory. I remember my dad, he would always like ruffle my ponytail, you know, or stroke my neck. And the other thing I used to do with my dad is fight him a lot. Yes. And I remember being home from drama school, and I would have been like 20 years old. And I was laying on the floor and I went, who do you reckon's the hardest in the family now? And everyone's just ignoring me because I'm just random. And I'm like, and I think one of my sisters went, well, obviously Dad, because my dad's covered in tattoos and been in the Navy, so it's like...
Yeah, he wins,
you know,
I
think he even boxed in the Navy. And I said, well, I'm not sure, because he's pretty old now. I reckon I could have him in a fight. Not really realising that he was in the room, and within 2 seconds he picked me up in one hand and lobbed me onto the sofa. But I think actually looking back, I think he probably really maintained a really healthy connection just with that physical rough and tumble, because if my dad had come for a Care Bear hug, I'd have been like, back
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not in that place right now, but actually having, you know, playful rough and tumbles and things like that really helps to keep things alive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting what the kids were saying about what things they like to still do, and I'm really interested to hear them say music, because you know I think I'm sure Libby would be mortified to think that we had the same taste in music, but we do love musicals. So actually, there's a real tradition in our family that you know when we're driving in the car, we'll put some musicals on. We all know all the words, and we're all able to just like absolutely belt it out. And there's just this shared. It's like a shared experience.
A common ground.
Yeah, and it
Which
doesn't
you've
need
kind
to
of
be a
built
deep.
up over the years as well, haven't you? So
Absolutely.
it's like that culture of the family, those foundations that you put in for 12 years start to shine through a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to keep those in the face of our teens saying, "Oh, I'm bored. Oh, I don't want to come. Do I have to come? Oh, it's boring." Which we know that that's what they're going to do, but actually keeping a family structure and keeping some of those traditions and routines in place is really important, I think.
So like last year, like, you know, if we not just staying connected with them physically, but like you're saying, common interest. I was the first one in my house to download Pokemon Go. You know, because I was like, I am in there and I am taking them with me, because I could see that all these kids were going to love it, and I was like, I just want to be that mum. So I'm like, kids, let's get in the car. We're going to go all across town. We're going to catch them all.
Without being weird.
Got to catch them all, you know? So yeah, without being weird, but even just that, connecting on those levels, what their interests are, being interested. I Google all sorts. They say things and I'm like, yeah, yeah. Later on, I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love
just
that.
to keep up to date and, you know,
But
to
this
not
is
to
the thing.
necessarily use the language, but just at least to be able to know what they're interested in. And
So with the world changing so much, because for these teens, I mean, they touched very briefly on kind of the bullying that they face. I mean, I didn't have that when I was their age. I didn't have people say, go kill yourself. That wasn't in our language. And I think that's very much a culture that has come from this kind of keyboard warrior mentality and just completely losing those boundaries. But it's really important, isn't it, to be responsive and not reactive to our teens, because if they're already reactive, the last thing they need is for us to fire up. So what tips would you give parents who are perhaps maybe in a tussle at the moment and not quite sure how to navigate through? Maybe their kids are on a bit of a standoff and they feel like they're in a constant cycle of reacting. What advice would you give them? What things can they implement?
I think there's a few things. One would be kind of sometimes I think there's a danger of giving our teenagers too much freedom to avoid the conflict, because actually teenagers need more than ever a sense of safety and boundaries. But I think we've got to be flexible. I think we've got to learn the art of negotiating. I think, you know, what you were saying earlier, Claire, about being curious about what their interests are. You know, if they come out with, because they're quite provocative teenagers as well, they will come out with one-liners that they will know, you know, is going to fire us up.
how interesting.
Absolutely, and it's about kind of recognising, again, having that empathy for, okay, this is what they do, this is their job to do this right now. How can I respond in the best possible way? And I think being curious, using almost conflict as a way of having communication with your child. So keep the conversation going, even if it feels like it's getting to that point. Be aware of your own emotions, keep yourself in check, try and stay in your upstairs brain if you can. But ask those questions. So what is it that makes you feel like that? Who else thinks like that? Why is it that that you feel that way about this? The other thing I think is be accessible. I was talking to my mum the other day, and she often she was laughing because she thinks that all those conversations, the most meaningful ones, happen in the most awkward times, usually at 11:30 at night when everybody's trying to go to bed.
One of those teens.
When they come into the room,
door.
Can I talk?
Now, really now? Like now's the only time, okay.
But I think we've got to be,
Yeah,
and that's
I agree.
about being ultimately responsive, isn't it? And yeah, if you absolutely can't do it in that moment, then at least give them some, acknowledge how they're feeling in that moment, and then say, we need to come back to this.
Yeah.
This is important. I can see this is really important to you, and I want to be there for you. But ultimately, just be responsive and be accessible to them. Yeah, I just think, you know, trying to, even if they've got like the most weirdest taste in music, you know, Libby went through a stage last year of this kind of real heavy metal banging music. So instead of kind of like, oh, shut that racket up, it's like, what is it about that, Libs, that you like? What is it about that? Yeah, tell me about
I can't understand that.
Yeah. So it's our job, you know, we think that sometimes they're on a completely different planet to us. It's our job to get alongside them. You know, one of the things that you know, you know, particularly with the social engagement part that the kids talk so much about, didn't they? How important, you know, their peers are the first people they're going to go to if they're in crisis sometimes. But actually, you know, we can't feel threatened by that as parents. We can't feel rejected. We can't take it personally, because actually they're building, you know, quite often they're building lifelong relationships. They're building friendships for life at this stage. And they're building social skills, they're building ways of, you know, negotiation and understanding themselves better. So I think we need to bring that. I mean, one of the things that we do a lot, thankfully we live really close to the secondary school, so in the mornings I often come down and there's like 6 teenagers sat around having breakfast in my kitchen. But that's, you know,
so nice.
that's
great.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
Lovely.
I love it, and it's like, you know, that because actually if their friends kind of think you're kind of cool, then that rubs off as well.
I always think it's good to be the home that everyone wants to come to.
Definitely.
Like, I'd rather do the washing up and the cleaning up, but know that everyone's in my home than not know where they are.
So welcome their their friends, because their friends are going to be the most significant thing in their lives right now.
I agree.
I think one of the things I love when you look at, we know Jesus was without sin.
Yeah.
We know that. He didn't do anything wrong. And I love the story when Mary and Joseph are walking back all the way home and he goes back to the temple and they turn up and they're stressed to pieces, super reactive. Where have you been? What have you been doing? And he's like, what do you mean, what have I been doing? I'm here, I'm doing my father's business. What's the deal? What's your beef? And I love this because actually it kind of teaches us as parents a lesson. I think often when you hit your teenage years, there's things in you that start to grow that are going to be in your future.
Absolutely.
There are things that God starts to plant within you that are getting ready to propel you into adulthood and into what you've got next. And one of the things I was so grateful for from my parents was that actually they gave me space to develop that mind and that thinking. And even though probably half my ideas were rubbish and most of what I said stunk, they gave me the space to be vulnerable and say, oh, but I think the world should look like this and I think the world should be done like that, because actually who I was in that little moment was a reflection of what I was about to walk into. We have like 1 minute left. Any quick ideas to send a parent away with?
I think Jesus, if we go back to that, the model that Jesus gave us, he picked out some teenagers and he got them busy doing good. He just got them busy. He got their hands busy, he got their minds busy, he got their spirits busy. He just got them busy doing good. And he understood that their biggest capacity for multitasking is in that teenage years. The brain is at its best for absorbing and doing, absorbing and doing, absorbing and doing. And we let our teenagers drift off, and there's too much freedom to, not that there's too much freedom to do, but just too much freedom to, what did you say? You used a phrase.
Being versus doing? Or?
Yeah, being versus doing. And I think if you can help guide them and coach them into some really good, purposeful things, but keep them busy from the moment they wake up, give them, like, I don't mean jobs, I mean purpose. Get them busy doing good. And the Ephesians says, parents, do not do your kids' head in. I don't know if you have that phrase. No, it really says, do not exasperate your children.
Yeah.
That's what
No, I'm good. I feel like I'm prepped now for a few years' time. I hope you are too. Thank you once again for joining us. And since this is an important topic for so many of us, Emma has kindly blogged once again, giving you some great tips for staying connected with your team. Thank you once again. We will catch you very soon. Be blessed.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at promisecollective.co.uk. Bye!